He lifted his glass and said it exactly that way. To the one who always arrives, broke, needy, and still hoping to matter. The words hit the table before the laughter followed. I heard forks tapping against plates, my aunt's sharp laugh, and my cousin nearly spitting out his soda. The reaction moved across the picnic table like a wave, easy and relaxed, as if embarrassment was just another thing being served that afternoon. I was still holding the bottle I had brought, the cheapest one naturally. My fingers tightened around the neck of the bottle, not enough to shake, just enough to remind myself that I still had control. Across from me, my brother never looked away. He smiled into his drink, already pleased with himself. The breeze carried the smell of grilled food and freshly cut grass. Everything felt normal on the surface, safe, comfortable, except it wasn't. I slowly raised my glass and met his eyes. And to the desperate one who... The laughter stopped before I could finish. My whole life, I have been the extra chair nobody bothered to unfold. Not invisible, something worse. Visible enough to be judged, but never important enough to be understood. I'm the younger brother of the successful one. The easy comparison everyone makes without even realizing it. My name is Daniel Mercer, the one who never quite made it. And him, Adrian Mercer. Reliable. Successful, the person everyone preferred talking about. Growing up, Adrian learned how to win people over. I learned how to study them. He spoke first. I listened longer. When something broke, I fixed it quietly. When something succeeded, somehow his name was already attached to it. I honestly don't think he ever noticed the pattern. Or maybe that was exactly the point. Nobody questions the person who always seems dependable. Nobody keeps track of the small loans, the late-night phone calls, or the favors returned without recognition. To everyone else, I looked unreliable because I never advertised what I did, but I kept records, not because I was angry, because it was my habit. Dates, amounts, conversations. If you watch long enough, people repeat themselves, and patterns start to appear. My family loved patterns. They liked believing they already knew who someone was, so I let them. For years, I let them believe I was exactly who Adrian described. It wasn't only that picnic, it never is. Adrian had a talent for turning tiny moments into lasting judgments. A glance held a little too long when I arrived late. A quiet laugh whenever someone asked what I was doing with my life. He rarely insulted me directly. He didn't have to. His tone did the work. At family dinners, he would refill everyone's glass except mine, then notice a second later, "Oh, sorry, didn't see you." Everyone would laugh. I would smile and act like it didn't matter. The stories he told about me were usually close to the truth. That was what made them effective. A small mistake became a habit. A delayed payment became a character flaw. A favor I couldn't return immediately became proof that I couldn't be trusted. Then he would soften everything with a friendly smile, as if he were helping me instead of damaging me. The rest of the family followed without realizing it. My cousin stopped asking what I thought. My aunt started explaining simple things to me more slowly. Even my mother hesitated before defending me, almost as if she needed to decide whether I deserved it first. Nobody was openly cruel. That was what made it work. It was quiet, steady, a slow wearing down of a person. And the worst part was that they believed they were being kind. The change didn't arrive in one dramatic moment. Most truths don't. It came quietly after being obvious for much longer than I wanted to admit. It was a Tuesday evening, nothing important. I was sitting alone in my apartment, sorting through old emails, mostly out of habit. I was comparing dates, reviewing transfers, checking old conversations. There were introductions I had made for Adrian that he later described as his own accomplishments. At first, I wasn't angry. Then I found the email, a forwarded thread. My name appeared casually inside it, almost like a footnote. Adrian was explaining to someone important that I was unreliable and that it would be better to work through him instead. The date caught my attention. It matched perfectly with an opportunity I never knew existed. I read the message twice, not because I didn't understand it, because of how easy it sounded, how natural it was for him. That was the moment everything became clear, not the betrayal. I had accepted that long ago. The realization was something different. He wasn't responding to who I was. He was helping create who everyone believed I was, again and again, year after year, and everyone else adjusted their view of me accordingly. I closed my laptop, then I sat in silence for a long time. No anger, no panic, just clarity. If life was partly about perception, then I hadn't been losing. I had simply refused to play. That changed that night. I decided to participate. I never confronted him. That would have accomplished nothing. Instead, I treated the situation like a problem that needed solving. Patterns, leverage, facts. I already had years of records, transfer dates, messages, agreements that were never official but always honored, conversations showing who introduced whom, evidence that wasn't dramatic, evidence that was better, consistent. My job helped. For 3 years I had worked in compliance consulting, mostly with small companies, contracts, documentation, liability reviews, the kind of work nobody notices until something goes wrong. I understood how quickly stories collapse when paperwork enters the room. So I started organizing everything. Clear timelines, neutral language, No accusations, just facts arranged in the proper order. I contacted a few people Adrian had quietly placed barriers between. Not to complain, not to expose him, just to reconnect, to clarify details, to let them see the complete picture. And then I waited. The goal was never to expose Adrian. The goal was to remove the false version of me. Because once that disappeared, the version of him built on top of it would struggle to survive. The opportunity arrived disguised as something ordinary. Adrian had spent months chasing a partnership, one of those deals that changes how people see you. He talked about it often, casually, like success was already guaranteed. At the picnic, before the toast, I'd overheard enough to know the meeting was close. I never interfered. I simply answered an email. One of the contacts Adrian had redirected through himself reached out directly to me. Polite, professional, curious. I responded the way I always did, clearly, completely, with context Adrian had never included. I attached timelines when necessary, referenced previous discussions, allowed the work to speak for itself. I never mentioned Adrian once. The next day they requested a call, then another. By the time Adrian entered his meeting, they already knew who I was. Not as an afterthought, not as a footnote, as the starting point. The person who built the relationships, the person who laid the groundwork, the person carrying the quiet responsibilities nobody celebrated. I wasn't present when everything started falling apart for him, but I heard about it afterward. The pauses, the unexpected questions, the moments where confidence met facts that didn't match. Nothing explosive happened. No public scene. Just the careful weakening of a story that could no longer support itself. It didn't break all at once. It slowly became thinner. That's how real change usually happens. Nobody announces it. People simply adjust. Adrian stopped telling certain stories. Not immediately, just less often. The jokes about me disappeared first, then the comments, then the subject itself. At family gatherings, he became more careful with his words, almost like he was listening for possible contradictions. The rest of the family followed his lead the same way they always had. My aunt asked questions and actually listened to the answers. My cousin started messaging me directly instead of contacting Adrian first. Even my mother looked at me differently, not with shock, with understanding, like she was remembering something she should have known all along. Nobody apologized. I never expected them to. A damaged reputation doesn't heal in one moment. It changes through repetition. The same way it was damaged in the first place. As for Adrian, he never confronted me. That would have required certainty, and certainty was something he no longer possessed. The important thing wasn't proving him wrong. The important thing was that I no longer needed him to define who I was. Once that happens, everything else begins to change. I still attend family gatherings, the same table, the same uneven chairs pressed into the grass, the same breeze moving through conversations. But the weight feels different now. I don't arrive early, I don't stay late, I show up when I want, I leave when I'm ready. And I speak only when I have something worth saying. Strangely enough, that's when people finally started listening. Adrian and I live in a quieter balance now, not repaired, just honest. He no longer performs a smaller version of me for everyone else, and I no longer waste energy correcting him. There is nothing left to prove. The image he created eventually collapsed under its own weight. I didn't destroy it. I simply stopped supporting it. Work opportunities found me naturally. Conversations opened on their own. The life I had spent years building quietly finally became visible without explanation. And the anger, it never needed to become larger. It only needed a purpose. That day at the picnic, I never finished my sentence. I didn't need to, because the strongest revenge is rarely spoken out loud. It is understood later, far too late, and usually with no audience at all.